Hi guys, it's Kelly here. I'm back with another video for Honeybee Stamps. It is a long one. Settle in, get a drink, get some popcorn. So I am using a couple of different sets. This one is called This One for the Guys. These are Father's Day cards, but you could use the technique for pretty much anything. I'm using the Lovely Layers Owl and then 3D embossing folders Into the Woods and Fall Forest. I feel like there's something else there as well. Oh, I pulled out Slice and Stump, but I actually didn't end up using it. So what we're going to do is we're going to create the same-ish background, and we're going to use it for 3 different cards, and just kind of each time, one will be like the easiest, and then a middle of the road, and then kind of working it out into a full-blown extra, I can't leave anything alone kind of Kelly card. So this is something that's really easy. I am using my Distress inks to create my backgrounds, but you can use whatever inks you prefer to blend with. When I was picking out my colors, because I am using like the more woodsy 3D embossing folders, I am sticking with a lot of greens and blue greens for my background. So you're going to see there is a lot of ink blending, but I'm going to speed it up here in just a little bit. So I have one that is 5x7 because that fits the full folder for that one. And then I have another one that is A2 because it fits the folder better for that one. Now I think all the Honeybee 3D embossing folders are 5x7, but they were not always. But I still use the Into the Wood ones because it's one of my favorite ones. I actually did another video with Father's Day cards and how to add metallics. I'll link that at the end if maybe that's more your bag, but it is definitely kind of a very similar look to at least one of the cards. But so I will just give you the quick rundown of the colors that I used. I used Twisted Citron, Mowed Lawn, Rustic Wilderness, Pine Needles, Crushed Olive, Mermaid Lagoon, Peacock Feathers, and Uncharted Mariner. I think that's all of them. You don't necessarily need that many colors, but I like a lot of color variation. So I'm using just regular blending brushes. You can see I'm totally putting these down sporadically. There is not really any rhyme or reason other than to just have the interest that the color variation provides in the background. But I will do mine twice. If you have never seen my video on like how I approach ink blending and like the way to get, in my opinion, like really dramatic kind of well blended colors that are bold. I have a video on that as well. But the crux of that whole video is I blend it twice. I do it twice because you have to build up the colors, especially if you're starting on white cardstock. You do need to build up that opacity. And so that is why I do it twice. I feel like it gives me a better blend. Again, now you could do this particular technique with any. I used 3D embossing folders. You could use those. You could use regular embossing folders. You could use stencils. You could use a large background stamp. Like this is going to work for any of those, to kind of create a more dynamic background. And then you may, depending upon what you're like celebrating or what you're what situation you're creating the card for, you may use different supporting characters. I'm using the Lovely Layers Owl because it is a little bit more on the masculine side. I'm also using the Fence, and again, I feel like there's something else. I did color the stump, but I didn't end up using it. So you will see it kind of make its appearance in here. But so anywho, I made so many Father's Day cards. I made so many Father's Day cards in such a short amount of time, because just with all of the things that like have been going on in my life, I have not been, as we've talked about, not been as motivated. But now, like, very much being a functional card maker, like I needed the cards. So I needed one for my husband from me, one for my husband from our children, one from my dad, from us, from the kids, his dad, from us, from the kids, and then my ex-husband, who's Peanut's dad, and my brother-in-law. Because even though I don't get him anything, I still give him a card. So it's 8 cards. That's 8 cards that I had to knock out. And then I realized after, like, because we did our celebration on Saturday, because Peanut goes to his dad's on Sunday, as he should, just like he comes to me on Mother's Day. But so we always do it on Saturday. We do a cookout and do both the grandpas and Eric, and and I never took a picture. I'm so sad about it. Okay, let's talk about what I'm doing here. So this is a technique that you guys have seen me use before with the brayer. I am using a black pigment ink, which stays wet a little bit longer, but it also is much more opaque. So, inking it up with the brayer and then putting it down. This part, I'm putting it down to the part that's going to emboss. And then once I close the lid, I do secure it with a piece of tape just to make sure it's not going to pop open. Nothing's going to be moving around. It's nice and secure. So, and then this one is the 5x7. So initially I started inking up the side that would be the same thing, that would be like the debossed. And I was like, oof, I really want the detail to be in the trees, not in the background. So you can do it either or, and it will be 2 different looks. I ended up just cleaning this off, which was really easy. You can either take it to your sink and wash it, or do what I did, which was just use a microfiber rag that I have. And then I switched it around so that I could ink up the detail of the trees. And then I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to put my paper in there and then close it up and seal it with just a little piece of tape to keep anything from moving around. And I use the Spellbinders Platinum 6. So it's nice and easy with the universal plates. It tells me exactly what I need in order to line up. So now we've run them through, and then here are our results. These are our trees in the 5x7, and then these are the trees that are the pines. I love them both. I think that they're both really pretty. And this is what I mean when I say, like, it's the same background-ish. It really is. Like, we use the same technique in the same colors. It's just 2 different folders. And honestly, that was just to save me the time of having to clean them in between. I'm just being truthful. So for this one, this 5x7 one, I'm cutting it in half at 3.5 because I'm going to use them. Like I said, we're making 3 cards, so I'm going to use them 2 different ways. So now from here, once I have the black down, you of course can leave it that way if you love it that way. But I am actually going to add more color to it. And I have, like I said before, I have greens and blue greens in the background, so I could go either way, and I'll show you what they look like with both of them. But for this one, I did definitely go more towards the blue-green, so I'm creating, you guys probably heard me mention it, that kind of halo effect, where it's like a vignette, like a vignette. How do you say it? Vignette? I think it is that. I think it's French. Whatever. If I'm not, correct me in the comments, because I can take constructive criticism. But anyway, basically we want it to be lighter in the center, which is going to draw our eye to the middle, and darker around the edges. So I started with the Mermaid Lagoon, then went out to the Uncharted Mariner, and then I'm going to go out from there to Black Soot. And there's going to be some of you who are going to be like, you went all the way out to black. Black is so dark. But here's the thing, because these inks are dye inks and they're a little bit more transparent, where, as previously stated, we have to build up the color. If you just go in on the edges with black, you're not necessarily going to get black. It's not going to be like solid. It's just going to darken up those edges so that when you go back in with your next color, it builds on that darkness. So my edges don't look black. My edges actually look like a really dark teal color. But you can see that green in the center that's kind of popping through, which I totally love. And so again, with the two color blend, this is just to help make those trees a little bit more of a background instead of a little bit more of the focal point. So this one I did the blue, and then for this one I'm going to switch and do the green. I do think that I went in and kind of added another layer of blue because I really liked that one to the left, that little blue section, which is the one I think I ended up using for the card. But anyway, you get the idea. We're just going to do the same thing. We're gonna work around those edges and darken them up. And you can do the same thing in both green and blue or any other, colors of ink that you have. So what were we talking about? Oh, the party. So anyway, we always do ours on Saturday, and I obviously have my husband's card that I made because he lives here, and so I will be able to steal it back to take a photo from it. But my dad's and my father-in-law's papa's cards, I did film it, but then I did not get to take any pictures of it, and now they're gone. Which I should have told them, like, hey, just leave the card. I'll give it back to you the next time I see you, just so I could get pictures of it. But anyway, so up and coming, you'll be seeing a few Father's Day cards. But they'll always, like you guys know, they always have other techniques and tips and tricks and stuff, or that you could turn them into other holidays. So here are all three of the backgrounds done. Really happy with the way that they came out. And now I need to start working on my die cutting. So here's this fence, but I only need a portion of the fence to build out my scene card. So rather than cutting the whole thing out, I'm just cutting that portion. Here, what I'm doing is making sure my owl is going to fit on that fence before I commit to cutting everything out, because you guys know how I feel about die cutting. And then I'm going to cut out all the pieces parts for the owl. Now, originally, like I said, I had planned on using that stump, which you can see over on the left-hand side with the fence, but I didn't end up using it. And I did not cut out the perching branch, which is in the Lovely Layers owl, originally, but I did go back and cut it out because that is what I ended up using. So, anywho, I cut all of them out of white because that is how I roll. And then we're going to be doing some coloring with our alcohol markers. If you're not comfortable with alcohol markers, you could always, do some ink blending to put some color on these, or colored pencils, watercolor. You can, whatever floats your boat, you could absolutely use those. I just prefer alcohol markers. So here I've kind of split up my pieces parts into how I'm going to use them in the backgrounds. I am going to come back here. Okay, so it's an E53, 55, 57, and 59. Why am I telling you that instead of you being able to see it? So remember the last video I told you guys that I was having issues with it focusing, and so I needed to mess around with the settings and see what the issue was. So I didn't notice any part of the video getting blurry this time, but I do notice that it won't focus on the numbers on the markers anymore. So I don't know which one's worse. I'm hoping there's a middle of the road and I just haven't discovered it yet. But in the meantime, I will tell you what colors I am using. And of course, they're always listed in the YouTube description. So for this fence, since I'm only going to see a portion of it, and I was playing around with doing it as a landscape card, I did cut out 2 more like fence posts instead of the whole thing, so that I would have it in case I needed it. And spoiler alert, I did need it. So I'm adding some shadow where that bar is going to come across, and then I'm just really, kind of flicking it up from where it would be darkest and making sure that I'm varying my strokes, but I'm not being super, I'm not being super detailed or super careful about it, because these dyes, they emboss like the wood grain right into it. So the color does add to that, but it is not necessary to get the texture. So I'm just going to work out to that E55, and then we have talked a lot about like how lighter colors will bleach out darker colors, and that kind of is what happened with my E55. So once I'm done doing like all of the coloring, I am going to go back in with my E57 and just kind of add a couple of little lines to help it really look like wood grain. So, and you can see my stump colored up there in the top left corner. The video was already so long, I didn't want to leave it in, but if that's something you're interested in seeing, I certainly can use it for another card. I'm sure of it, that I would be able to do something else with that. So yeah, I did not take any pictures of their Papa cards, so now I don't know what I'm going to do with that. My dad's I could just drive down the street and get, but Eric's dad's is a little bit more challenging for me to get my hands on. They live a little bit further away. The other thing that we talked about in the last one was that I was taking Peanut for his like to see about guitar lessons, because he had kind of mentioned that he might be interested in it. And so we did go, and this particular teaching is really geared more towards like performance based. So instead of just like learning how to play whatever instrument, guitar, drums, bass, you know what I'm saying? They gear it toward like working together as a group. Here, let me tell you what I'm using. It's a Y08, a YR24, and an E99. The brown family that you saw before was an E21, 23, 25, 27, and 29. So I'm coloring his feet yellow, and then this golden yellow color, and then also his eyes once it gets to that. I have not used this owl before. This is my first time using the owl. It came together pretty easily, but I did have a little bit of a learning curve, as I always do with the lovely layers, because it's hard for me to visually see how it will come together until we get closer to the end. And then, of course, I'll be making some adjustments as needed. So you can see I'm kind of messing around with the layers to see what I need to color what. And then once I can kind of figure it out, a really good way for you to know what needs to be colored is if it has embossed detail on it, then it's going to show, and it needs to have whatever color it is that you're doing. Since I don't know anything about owls, well, that's not true. I know they're nocturnal and they say who, and I know that because of Caitlin's Mickey Mouse Clubhouse book that we read at night. I'm kidding. I actually knew that before, but I don't know much else about them besides that. So following the embossed lines, I can see that there's layers of feathers. I did go back and refill that marker, just FYI. So I'm following kind of the layers of feathers and doing a little bit of flicking to create the down that would be laying one on top of the other. So that is what you see me doing there. And then the same thing for the actual wings, like these two separate pieces of wings. You can definitely see where the embossed detail shows where the feathers are, and so I'm trying to pay attention to that also. So anyway, we went and checked out the guitar lessons. They gave us a little tour. He got to kind of see how things would go. They had a couple of different options, like a true beginners, and then a kind of like beginner-ish, but the kids are a little bit older. And then, they have like the full, word experience. And so after talking with him about what our situation was, we decided to go with the true beginners, not only because he truly is a beginner. He doesn't have any practice with guitar, but we went with that because the kids are closer to his age. In the next group up, they could be older teenagers, and he has just turned 12. So that's just something we're trying to be conscientious of. But yeah, so he, after going and stuff, he seemed very excited about it. Our pocketbook wept. Is so expensive. I cannot, y'all, I was shocked. But with that expense, he has one-on-one lesson per week, and then he has one group rehearsal, which is like an hour and a half long each week. So then plus we have to, of course, get him the actual guitar, the amp, the straps, the bag, the whole thing. So the guy there said that they offered them, and depending upon what guitar you pick, it was anywhere from $300 to $500, which I don't know anything about musical instruments, and that may be on the cheap side. I have no idea, but I do know that that is a lot of doll hairs. Side note, back to the card. So our owl is coming along really well. I noticed in the pictures of like the horned owls that they had kind of this lighter section, almost like a beard. So I originally went with a C1 and a C3. I don't love that, and we are going to change it later on. And then for this piece, I did the kind of like the little, I almost call them sideburns. I don't even know what you call them, the little side pieces. And then I started the darkest color kind of at the back top of his head, and then moved it lighter as it got closer and closer to his beak. So another whatever, $300 to $500 depending upon which guitar you picked. So like we left there thinking like, whoo, buddy, we're gonna have to sell plasma or something. And then, of course, because we are a blended family, like my husband and I have a conversation about it, and then I have a conversation with my ex-husband about it, since, we're all footing the bill here. And so we are going to go ahead with it. We did talk to him about understanding the time commitment that he was going to have to put into it. And he is, I will give him credit. He's very excited about it. So my wonderful husband put out on his Facebook group, like, hey, does anybody have a guitar they're looking to get rid of? And actually we did end up with a few, offers. And so one of them was, one of the guys my husband works with, one of his detectives brought in his guitar, and it's a 7-string guitar, which I guess they're mostly 6. 7-string guitars are for like if you're really into like heavy metal. And Eric tried to give him money for it, and he was like, no, listen, I've brought it from state to state to state because I wanted to teach myself or take lessons, and I've never done anything with it. So if he can blow the dust off of it and get some use out of it, I'm happy to give it to him. So since he brought that home, Peanut has downloaded an app, and he has consistently been practicing on the app to learn the songs. So they invited us to come back later in the week, which would be like his actual rehearsal night. And so we did end up going back. Hold on, let's go back to the card. So here we're just going to use some glue and just build up our layers. The layering guides are available at Honeybee on their website. So if you just go in there and type in like Lovely Layers, I'll click on that, and on the right hand side it will click here for the layering, and it is tremendously helpful, and I pull it up with almost every single one that I do. And then as I'm doing this, anything that isn't lining up perfectly, it's going to allow me to go in and kind of color in anything that isn't like matched up perfectly, or maybe I didn't get it all the way saturated, so there's a white edge. So that's what I'm doing as I'm building it. So my nephew actually was the other one who was like, hey, I have this guitar. He's my cousin. I'd love to give it to him, which was so kind of him. So when we went to the rehearsal for him to kind of meet the same kids he'd be in the group with, we took the 7-string one, and they were like, everything works on it, but it's not a great one to learn on because it is a 7-string. A 6-string is much better for him to learn at a beginner rate. So while he was kind of hanging out and listening to the rehearsal, I ran to my sister's house and got my nephew's guitar and brought it back. It did not have any strings, and the bridge had been removed, and then also like it was dirty and like the frets needed to be polished and stuff. So one of their people who work there has like a side gig doing that. So he just kept the guitar, and he's going to get it all in operating form before we go back next week for our first lesson. So I'm super excited for him. I'm very, very proud of him for putting himself out there. I know that that is a huge struggle for him. And he has said, like, I don't know about the performance part, which I totally get. But I am hoping that as he learns the songs and he gains confidence, that will be less of an issue for him. So, this piece right here is kind of like where it creates like the eye sockets, and then also where like the beak will be. So, and I think if you had done this like in the regular colors, you wouldn't need to color in the beak like I just had to. That was my own doing, I think. And then I'm going to add some more shading to that kind of like beard part of it just to help it blend in a little bit more. Because I was just feeling like it was kind of too stark. And then for the eyes, they are like the tiniest little commas. So I did use my tweezers for those. You could also use like a crystal katana or like a gem tool to pick them up. And I found it easiest to put the glue on the owl and then kind of lay my eyeballs into it. In order for me to kind of get the eyeballs to look the way that I wanted, I did take my white gel pen and kind of trace the bottom of where the eye was, and then I went in with a black fine liner and colored in the center of where the eye was. Super cute owl, really happy with the way that they came out. For the sentiments, I am using the one of the guys for the larger sentiments, and then I'm also using, this one came out I think last year. We were using it, and this is to the wise one, so this obviously, you know, coordinates with the owl, but there is a happy Father's Day in there, as well as like a happy birthday and a cute one, you know, to the wise one, another year wiser. You know, that goes with those sentiments. I chose to do white heat embossing on black cardstock because I thought that it would pop the best with all of the things that we kind of have going on. So I'm just using some white detail embossing powder, and I always do preheat my my heat gun, so that way I have as minimal warping as possible. All of these have coordinating dies, so I used those to go ahead and cut them out. And I just held them in place with some pixie tape to make sure that they weren't going anywhere. And then we can actually start building the cards. I'm doing this voiceover super late. I don't normally do voiceovers this late at night, but I was too tired to do it last night because I was making cakes and brownies until very, very late. So it just didn't happen. Here, I am using my Spellbinder's guillotine trimmer. This is just something to note because I did want to have a, like a mat around it. The guillotine trimmer is the only thing that I have found that will cut 3D embossed paper without ripping it. So that's just something, I have a blade trimmer, the slide blade trimmer, and that always tears it. This next one I trimmed to 3.5 by 3.5. And then, so here's the first one, which is like kind of the nice, easy, fast one. You know, the background is what it is. And then I am going to adhere some black cardstock. This is cut just an 1/8 of an inch smaller than an A2 size card. And then this is our inked background. And this is cut a full quarter. So it's 4 by 5.25. So that way we have a double mat. We have the black mat and then the white on the edges. And then for that, we are going to use the With Love on Father's Day sentiment. These are, here's something I don't know if everybody realizes. Honeybee actually carries foam tape in black, which for something like this is so nice, because when you would, like, if you use the white, you would normally kind of look at, like, from the side, you would be able to see the white shining through. With the black, you can't see it at all. So for this, I'm just going to put it right there on that lightest part that we left, and automatically your eye is kind of drawn in and it's popped up, which adds a little bit of extra interest. Plus we have all that texture from the 3D embossing folder. So that's like super easy one. This one is kind of a combination between the two. So I have matted my my background. I trimmed it down, remember, to 3.5 by 3.5. I matted it with just 1/8 of an inch in black. And now I'm going to add this little perch branch, and I'm going to put my owl on it, but it's not a scene. It's more of a design element. You know, because you have this owl, he's kind of hanging out, his ears are above his head, you know, he's just kind of framed in on there. This one I decided to pop up the entire frame, and I just matched up the top to the sides to make sure that they were having the same amount of room in between. And then for this one, for this sentiment, I did use the black foam tape as well, but this one is the foam strips. So you can just put it on there, and I just stick the rest of it to the sheet. And then that way when you peel it off, again, you will not be able to see that from the side. And then I just put my Happy Father's Day on there. The last one kind of brings everything together. We do have the double mat like we had in the first card, but it's more to create like a window scene or a picture on the wall. Something else to note, this owl, I colored the owl the same exact way, but I used warm grays for kind of more of like a snowy owl look, or just something a little different, so that he would contrast and kind of pop off the background, but also pop off the fence as well. So I did the black frame on a slightly larger white frame, and then this is the piece that we inked and embossed. This is going to be the background, which is going to give the illusion of like forest in the background. Now, I did make a boo-boo with the fence. I'm just being honest because I think it's important. Nobody is perfect, neither am I. So my intention was to use the full 4 pieces that were together, and then, you know, fill in the rest with those other little 2 pieces like you see me doing here. But actually, when I glued it down, what I ended up doing was gluing the little piece down first, which meant I couldn't use the other, like the full 4 pieces. All that means is I had to put my owl in a different spot that I had originally intended to cover up that seam, but see how he's more further to the left, and that leaves more room for my sentiment to the right. So it ended up turning out okay. It wasn't like a huge deal, but that wasn't my original intention, and it did move the seam over, like I said, so that I had to cover it up. So here, this is just me like double and triple checking because I literally cannot help myself. I literally cannot help myself. And then, did you see that? I even moved it, and it did not occur to me, like, girl, this ain't even the way that you were gonna do it. Didn't even occur to me. So anyway, I'm just going to line them up. That bottom part I'm not worried about because it is going to be covered by our frame. And then here's where I realize in putting my owl on that his little like feathers, he's going to have to be over further to the right to cover his feathers to cover up that meeting, and his feet to still sit on the fence like I wanted them to. So I did not pop my bird up or my fence up because they have a lot of dimension already since they are layered die cuts. But I did pop up my sentiment just because I wanted it to be kind of flush with the owl. And then I can go ahead and here I started to put my frame on, and I was like, no, girl, you got to trim off that fence. That fence is just hanging out there. So yeah, I had to go back in and trim it on both sides. so that way it would make sense. And you could even do this like with the full fence and like a full 3D embossed background and skip the frame altogether. But I wanted to just show a way that you could use the same type of background to create 3 different looks and really get the most out of your products. So this is all 3 of them again. And thank you guys so much for joining me. I hope that if you're celebrating Father's Day, that it's a wonderful day for you and your family. I always appreciate your time, and I'll catch you guys on the next video. Bye.